Monday after the time change. So I skipped the devotional at lunch today, trying to catch up at work. I had taken a couple of days off and got busy, but Monday's not over, and so here I am from home in the dark rather than in the light, and I just wanted to share with you guys today, and I have in the past, but it's like God just continues to take me back and remind me of Romans 12, living sacrifice, being a living sacrifice. And so every time I read this, I feel like there's just something more or deeper, or I'm slow. And he just continually, in conversations and things I hear or see, devotionals I read, or just opening my Bible, brings me back to Romans 12, which says, "Therefore, brothers, to the mercies of God, I urge you to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this age, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may discern what is the good, pleasing, and perfect will of God." And so I just started looking at that and really thinking about it. And some of the thoughts that I wrote down is, well, part of it is Romans 12:12. That's an easy one to remember. And it says, "Rejoice in hope, be patient in affliction, and be persistent in prayer." And that being patient in affliction is so hard. And I feel like even our spiritual walks, at some point they're going so high and so low, hills and valleys. And then as you have a walk with God, they just kind of begin not to be quite as high or quite as low. And it's sometimes like a marriage where you just get more and more comfortable, although the awesomeness of God always gives me a pretty big high. And being patient in affliction, just right before I started this, I started thinking about all of these couples that I know. Sherry, I see you there. You could be one of those couples, when Art was going through his just diabetes. I'm thinking of Mark and Charlotte. I'm thinking of Eva and Larry. I'm thinking of Paul and Carol, of Larry and Natalie. We just have all of these couples where maybe one of them is really struggling with some health issues and the other one is this caregiver, and both of them are such an equally hard role to play. We're so helpless to help the one we love, or we're so sick and we're so dependent on this one to care for us. And so I am praying for these people. I'm so grateful for the marriages I see and the strength that is there. And so turning back to this living sacrifice and this giving to the ones that we love, but even more than that. And so I started reading Romans 12 and just asking questions. And God's so good because in his word, he always gives us the answers. He always shows us how. He doesn't ask us to do something without telling us how he would like it done. Even loving him, he tells us when we love him to do it with all of our heart and our mind and our strength. And sometimes loving somebody does require strength. We just have to push through emotion and just do things because they're the right things to do. And so he tells us to present our bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God, and that it's spiritual worship, coming before God as a living sacrifice. So what does he want us to do? He wants us to present ourselves to him, that our lives would be a living sacrifice. What kind? I'm saying living, but also holy and pleasing. And sometimes I think we think holiness is just something that's unattainable, and yet as we start to read this, he tells us what holiness is in a way. And sometimes it's just really practical, common sense stuff, like loving each other, encouraging each other, exhorting each other. So how do we do this? He says we do it by not conforming to this world that tells us that we deserve something, this world that tells us that it's all about me, this world that tells me that I need to have it my way, that you're not fulfilling my needs. And it never tells us, that you know what? Put yourself down and put somebody before you. Treat other people with kindness regardless of how they treat you. One of the sentences I read the other day was, it's meekness, not weakness. And I had been taught that meekness is power under control. You have the power to do all kinds of things, but you choose not to. And hi, Stacy. Oh my gosh, I haven't seen you for so long, but I'm so glad even when I see you pop up on here. So going back to this meekness versus weakness, you know, the world teaches us that if we don't stand up for ourselves, you know, that we're weak. Sometimes people misinterpret us holding back and not reacting as weakness, and it's not, because I promise you it takes a lot more control to bite your tongue, to speak in kindness, than to lash out and let your anger and everything else go out, which takes more power. Sometimes it takes a lot more power just to hold back and be respectful or not return evil for evil. And that's what this Romans 12 is all about. And I guess I could probably read this every day for a year and still need the reminder. And that's why I call this reminders. So how do we become this living sacrifice that's holy and pleasing to God? By not conforming to the world, but being transformed by the renewing of our minds. How does our mind get renewed? Our mind is renewed every time we open the Word and we read what God says. And so I'm coming to you and maybe I'm giving my opinion or putting my spin on it, but I don't want to do that. You know, I feel like in life I've been duped. I've seen people take scripture and twist it to whatever they want, and I don't want that. I want the whole thing. I want to know what it says in context and the meaning behind it, not because, you know, I'm saying this or a pastor saying this or a priest is saying this. I want to know what the truth is. And so once again, living this holy life, this living sacrifice, not conforming to what the world tells us we should do or how we should react, but what God says, you know, transformed in our mind, in our heart, in our body from this word of God. Why? And the Bible tells us that so that you may discern what is the good, pleasing, and perfect will of God. Oh my gosh, don't I want to know what that is? How many of us go through life and we don't know what our purpose is? But when you start reading this, He gives every single one of us a purpose. And He gives us gifts, and it says we have different gifts. If prophecy, use it according to the standard of faith. And every one of us has a different measure of faith. If service, in service. If teaching, in teaching. If exhorting, in exhortation. I like these where He uses different words. In giving with generosity, not tight. If you're going to give generously. In leading with diligence, not half-heartedly, but that you would lead with diligence. In showing mercy with cheerfulness. And I love this one. Love must be without hypocrisy. Is it even love if we're hypocritical in it? If, you know, I love you and I'm saying all this stuff, and the minute you walk away, then I'm just talking smack about you, or you know what, sometimes we try to just keep peace and placate people. I don't even know if I pronounce that correctly, but sometimes love is doing difficult things and even saying difficult things. But as long as we know in our heart that we're doing it for the right reason, that the motivation is right, loving must be without hypocrisy. Sometimes we have to say hard things to the people that we love, out of love, not out of anger, not out of other motivations, not to hurt them or put them down, but because we love them and we want more for them. Detest evil. That's a powerful word. Detest evil. And it was really interesting. The other day, my sister sent me a website, and it has these Hebrew words in it, and it showed the letters for love and hate, and it was the craziest thing because like all the letters for love were pointed in that direction, and all the letters for hate were pointed, and it was almost like a mirror image, but where they were pulling away from each other. And So hate, we think about God hates sin, but he does not hate the sinner, but it's like a turning away. And then when I see words like detest or abhorrent in the Bible, I think about the strength behind them in that emotion that God must feel. But it tells us to detest evil. And what is evil? Evil is something that is morally wrong, something that is harmful to another person. And I think every one of us has that in us where we can say something that is very harmful to another, we're powerful beings, and it can be for good or it can be for evil. It says cling to what is good. Don't just hold on to it. Cling to what is good. Show family affection to one another with brotherly love. Outdo one another in showing honor. Outdoing one another in showing honor. We live in this world where we want to pat ourselves on the back, and sometimes it's hard to pat people on the back when they're so busy building themselves up. And the older I get, the more I realize those people who are so busy patting themselves on the back, they probably need us to compliment them and genuinely lift them up more than people who are just humble, because obviously they don't feel that good about themselves, and so they're having to build themselves up. And so that's been a real struggle of mine, is just being able to genuinely compliment somebody who is so busy complimenting themselves. And I really think that they do need it. Let's see. Do not lack diligence. Be fervent in spirit. Serve the Lord. Diligence, fervency, two words I would never use to describe myself, but I wish I could. I love this, Romans 12:12 again. Rejoice in hope. There's always hope. There's always something. I love the football games when you just get to the last few seconds and then somebody scores a touchdown and it almost looked hopeless and they pulled it off at the very end. And we've seen, I've seen my kids' sports and just things that you never thought. So just that excitement. Rejoice in hope, no matter what it looks like. Be patient in affliction. Be persistent in prayer. Diligence, fervency, persistency. Words that I would not use to describe myself, but that God puts in here over and over again. Endurance is another one. Share with the saints in their needs. Sharing could come in all kinds of ways. Pursue hospitality. Pursue, chase after it. Find occasions to be hospitable to people. Here we go. Here's some tough stuff. Bless those who persecute you. And he says it again. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. Man, has this been a year for being able to rejoice and weep with other people. Be in agreement with one another. I come from a family where we just naturally like to argue, and even if we agree with each other, we'll just argue because that's what we do for fun. We'll just take the opposing point of view. So I think that goes back a few generations, and so this is contrary to our nature. Be in agreement with one another. Do not be proud. Instead, associate with the humble. Golly, I feel like I'm kind of like on the low part of the social strata. So for me to associate with the humble, actually I've had some great conversations, and so hopefully they were associating with me. I'm not going to use the word humble, but maybe lowly. Do not be wise in your own estimation. So this, what I'm doing right now, cracks me up because I definitely do not feel like I have any wisdom at all. And so for God to be able to use anything I have to say to help anybody else is kind of fun, kind of funny too. Do not be wise in your own estimation. Do not repay anyone evil for evil. Try to do what is honorable in everyone's eyes. How impossible does that seem in this day and age when everybody has an argument going on? If possible on your part, live at peace with everyone. Friends, do not avenge yourself. Instead, leave room for his wrath, for it is written, vengeance belongs to me. I will repay, says the Lord. If your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. for in doing so you will be heaping fiery coals on his head. Do not be conquered by evil, but conquer evil with good. So, I know this is long. I'm at home. I'm not stuck at a 30-minute time limit. So as I was reading this, I'm just kind of writing things down, and it's reminders to myself. Don't think too highly of yourself. Instead, think sensibly. Isn't that a funny second half of that sentence? Do not think too highly of yourself. Instead, think sensibly. And I thought about a job I was at, and we had this one guy, and he just knew how to run the whole show, and he had to have surgery. And the owner had just bought the company, and he kind of came with the company, and he was pretty sure if this man was not there, we were going to go under. And the guy had to go for a month of recovery. And you know what? I found out everybody's expendable. And so there's not a single one of us that should think more highly of ourselves, that we're just in this position and that we're not replaceable, because we are. And it brings a humility to us, and not so much that sense of entitlement because of this role that we play, and we've been there for a long time and everything else. So if we don't do what we're supposed to do, somebody else can come in and they can replace us very easy. And so we just need to have this gratitude. Remember that you are just one part of a much bigger body. But your part matters because there's only one you, and God made you exactly like you are for a reason, to touch the people around you. But we don't need to compare ourselves with each other, because He's made every single one of us unique. And He gives us gifts in our areas. And I don't want to look at yours and wish that I had it, but I want to look at yours and admire it and realize how much it means to me and how it helps me, and just in some way hope that something that I have can do the same for you. We watched this show. We've been watching, Smithsonian and some of these things, but they investigate these air crashes, right? These airplanes, they crash, they take every piece they can find, they put them back together, try to figure out what was going on. And so there was a company, and it was kind of like FedEx or UPS, and this plane had crashed, and they are rebuilding this. And it is the craziest thing. What caused this crash was a cotter pin. A cotter pin is like that just little tiny pin that you might put in a trailer hitch. This is on this huge airplane, and 3 pilots died. Luckily it was a freight plane, and so it didn't have a bunch of people on it, but 3 lives died because of this one little cotter pin. And I thought, every one of us has a place, a role, a gift, and we need to do our job, no matter how tiny that was on that giant plane. That was the cause of that crash. We need to appreciate others' gifts and realize that God created us differently, that He gave us gifts, prophetic gifts. I've heard prophecy is for encouragement, so I'm saying prophetic, service, teaching, exhorting, giving, leading, mercy. And then He goes in, just like I said, when He asks us to do something, He gives us very specific ways to do what He's asking us. And so verses 9 through 21 in Romans 12 are the specific do's and don'ts, which we just read. How do we love? We love without hypocrisy. We love genuinely with brotherly affection. Detest, I talked about that word, turning away from evil. Evil is something that's harmful to other people. To show brotherly love, affection, honor, hospitality, rejoice with each other. You know what? When somebody gets a new vehicle, gets a new job, graduates, has some kind of success, whatever it is, a new relationship, marriage, not to be jealous, but to truly rejoice with them and just enjoy for them that moment, because life throws so many hard and difficult things. So that moment, because you know what, you don't know tomorrow if you're going to be weeping with them, because we don't know what's coming tomorrow. And so He tells us, rejoice together, weep together, agree with one another. Don't be proud, instead be humble. Don't be wise in your own estimation. Don't repay evil for evil. Right now, we see people and they're jerks, and then something happens, and then we say, nah, that's karma. We like karma. And I say sometimes it's reaping what you sow. If you really go into karma doesn't happen until the next lifetime. And so even that is kind of being misused as a word, but we all know what it means. So it says, don't avenge yourself, but leave room for God's wrath. And a lot of times, we're angry and we want that. But if we really stop and think it over, oh my gosh, you know what? I don't want God's wrath to fall on anybody. I might be angry for a moment, but I'm going to get over it. And I will leave room for God's wrath. And pray in the meantime that there's mercy and grace, and that, that I can have a forgiving heart just as He forgave me. And it might take me a while sometimes. Sometimes it might take an hour. Sometimes it might take a day. It's really hard when it takes years. But I pray that God would just cleanse my heart and teach me how to forgive as He's forgiven me. If your enemy is hungry or thirsty, feed him. Give him something to drink. Have you guys ever gone to a relative's house and they don't even offer you something to drink? And he's asking you to do this for your enemy, So we should start with our families and start learning hospitality and welcoming them in, offering them something to drink, something to eat. That's a good place to start. And then you never know. You may have to offer your enemy something to eat or drink. Conquer evil with good, and don't be conquered by evil. So that's the reminder. I think I gave you guys lots of things. I'm sure that I'm repeating myself. Maybe it comes with old age, but just remember that you are a living sacrifice to God. And my son got this job at this meat processing place, and they kill the beef, and they do the slaughter and they cuts and everything else. And he was saying, wow, it's crazy. He said, some of those animals are so beat up and they're so bruised and that. So I see a bunch of cows in the field, right? They're covered with their hide. I don't know what they really look like underneath. And in the Bible, God always says, bring the first fruits, bring the best, unblemished, unspotted animals. He wanted the best. And if we are living sacrifices, what are we really bringing to Him? Are we bringing the best? Are we, beaten, bruised? We're giving Him the leftovers, fat, lazy? So I was thinking about that, being a living sacrifice. And sometimes we have to push ourselves to give Him the best. And maybe that's why He says to love Him with all of love Him with all of our mind, our heart, and our strength. Sometimes it takes strength. It takes a lot of effort to do what's right. All of these things right here are difficult things, and we have a world telling us that we deserve all this stuff, and they're not telling us to do these things. So I kind of love that, going back to that disagreement. I disagree with the world. I agree with what God says, and even if it's difficult, I hope that all of us can learn to do that. Anyway, thank you guys for taking the time watching. And I hope that there's something in here that just challenges you to be a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. And I hope you guys have a really good week. Okay, good night.